Hey geeks, welcome back to the Stay Geek Studios. Today we're going to be talking about the Marvel Treasury edition of Jack Kirby's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Now, this is probably one of the more interesting comic books ever created, in my opinion, of course. It came out, I think, in 1976 or 77. When Jack Kirby had come back to Marvel from being at DC Comics. As you may know, Jack Kirby was at Marvel first, then went to DC, then came back to Marvel. It's a whole saga. You can read about it all over the internet and find several videos regarding it. And of course, he had a career before Marvel as well, which is also well documented. So when he came back to Marvel for the final time in the late 70s, Marvel was in the process of purchasing a number of film licenses. And for whatever reason, they picked up Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, which was a film that was released in 1968. It was either 68 or 69, before the moon landing, before the Apollo 11 moon landing. It was a film known for its state-of-the-art special effects that still hold up to this day. It's probably the first film that had realistic space special effects. And if you look at sci-fi movies prior to that, the special effects just weren't on the level of 2001. 2001 set the stage for a film like Star Wars to have the special effects that it did, and those were also groundbreaking special effects in Hollywood at the time. When Stanley Kubrick made 2001 A Space Odyssey, he had cooked up the idea and then had gone to Arthur C. Clarke, a well-known and famous science fiction author. And Kubrick went to him and said, hey, look, I got this idea. It's going to be a novel and a movie. I'm going to make the movie, and you, Arthur, can write the novel concurrently. So it's kind of a weird situation there. A lot of novels don't come out of a movie, but Arthur C. Clarke had already written a short story called The Sentinel, which kind of set the stage for what became 2001. And so Kubrick ran with that, wrote a screenplay, and started feeding the screenplay as he was writing it to Arthur C. Clarke so that Clarke could write the novelization. Now, at some point, Kubrick's script and Clarke's novel began to coalesce but then diverge, let's say because of artistic differences. So what you see in the film is a little different than what you have in the novel, which makes it fun for science fiction fans because you can read the novel and see the film and read the short story that started the whole idea. And so you've got three different interpretations or angles of the overall arching themes and plot points of that story. Well, now comes along Marvel Comics with Jack Kirby, who in himself is you know, his own level of visionary and uber creative person. And so Marvel went to Kirby and said, look, we got some work for you. One of the things we want you to consider is doing a comic book adaptation of the film 2001 A Space Odyssey. And story goes, Kirby wasn't actually that interested in doing it, which is kind of unusual because you would think that Kirby would have jumped all over that, because a lot of the themes in 2001 A Space Odyssey are kind of in alignment with Kirby's visions, you know. His visions, both in comic page form and probably within his incredible imagination. So it's interesting you have this product, 2001 A Space Odyssey, that has sort of been the beneficiary of these amazing creative talents and storytellers like Clarke and Kubrick, and then Kirby kind of had the final word on it. And all of the amazing and talented people that helped in the process of creating that movie, which was, again, a groundbreaking cinematic achievement, really. And if you haven't seen the film, I would say go watch it now and then come back and finish this video, because there will be spoilers. Even in the comic book adaptation, you know, it still follows along the general storyline of the film. The comic book adaptation, though, is a different piece of art, worthy of investigation. And in fact, as I mentioned before, you know, it to me is probably one of the greatest comic books ever created, even though the work was original to Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. But it's Kirby's take on it, and it's right up Kirby's alley because it's just so cosmic, you know. And when you think about the themes of 2001: A Space Odyssey, what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with super advanced extraterrestrial presences that communicate with mankind, both in his primitive ape-like state and his hominid state, as we, you know, inhabit today, in symbolic terms, in telepathic terms, in terms of leaving behind clues to the nature of their intelligence, and the, you know, they leave breadcrumbs, so to speak, and this is what the monolith in the film is. The monolith being a large black stone-like object, and it is found early in the film by early man hominids, you know, our ape progenitors. And in the comic book, as we know, Kirby is fantastic at drawing animals, ape-like animals, and desert landscapes and sort of otherworldly, you know, prehistoric landscapes. If you look at his work on Kamandi with DC, Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, and Marvel at that point, he was doing Devil Dinosaur, which was kind of a different take on the Kamandi tropes. Both are worth reading, those entire series. So again, that was those opening sequences in the film where I believe the primary protagonist of the film at that time is an ape, and I think they named him Moonwatcher. I think, if I remember correctly. So Moonwatcher is the first ape to become aware of the monolith in the midst of his tribe. And when they all become aware of it and begin to investigate it, it transmits a signal to them. In the film, this is conveyed by a sort of an audio effect, but it's really more of a telepathic signal. After hearing the signal, Moonwatcher, I guess pondering the troubles that he and his tribe have, they have trouble protecting their source of water, which is a small lake. They can't protect it from the other tribes that overwhelm them with their numbers. They are frequently predators to, or not, they are frequently the victims of predators to wild, you know, things like wild hogs, leopards and so forth that attack them. So, you know, they're barely eking out an existence. They're lacking in intelligence. They have no tools. They have not discovered fire yet. So they're just getting by as a species. After communing with the monolith, Moonwatcher is sort of playing around with a set of dead bones, animal bones, and begins to realize, picking up one of the larger pieces, like a femur bone, that he can kind of swing it around and kind of hit the ground with it, and notices that it has a cause and effect of the force of his arm to the bone, to the ground, to making other smaller shards of bone fly into the air. And he runs with that idea of, hey, wait a minute, the realization that this is a tool. This bone can be a weapon. I can use this to club the animals that are preying on me and then begin to eat them. I can use it to defend my territory from the other tribes so that they don't drink my water source. And so that's essentially what happens at that point in the film. And of course, there is that famous scene where after his victory in defending the water source and defeating the other competing tribe, he throws the bone in the air that juxtaposes with a satellite in space as we fast forward into the human future where we are now a presence in space. The bone becomes the satellite. The advancement of technology has gone from a simple bone as a tool to now we're floating complex space-borne systems in Earth's orbit. So we've transcended the boundaries of our Earth and have begun to make our mark upon space. And Kirby follows all that in the comic book. It's interesting in the book what he does is he gives you more, because of the format of comic books, you know, you can drop in more letter boxes. The unique thing about the film is there's no there's no dialogue in the film for the first 28 minutes or so. Because it's all apes, so there's no people talking. That doesn't come till later, till the parts where they're our presence in space has been established. And so in that point in the comic book, Kirby has to basically kind of explain what's happening, to the reader, but also visually the explanation is there. So that must have been probably kind of a challenge for him, because you can tell that story technically just visually without words. But I'm sure Marvel editors, at the time, didn't really believe in the intelligence so much of their audience. It's kind of conundrum because, most people that read that comic book, most of them probably already saw the film. So they, if Kirby were able to convey those opening scenes of pre-man, dawn of civilization, just visually without words, he could have done that. But I'm sure Marvel's editors, told him, like, you got to kind of have words that sort of narrate, what's happening. And so he did that, but in masterful Kirby dialogue style, of course. The book then, of course, jumps into the 21st century, into the year 2001. And actually, think about this. I think it actually just goes to the year 2000, because if you're familiar with the film and you think about the scene where they're on Clavius Station on the moon and they discover the other monolith, now the advanced humans, in the 21st century have discovered this monolith on the moon, and it's been there for something like 3 million years or whatever from the carbon radio dating that they've done. And then it says 18 months later, the Jupiter mission, starts up. So, I think they actually discovered the monolith in the year 2000, early maybe 2000, and then, the mission to Jupiter started in 2001. I think so. Anyway, that's never explained in the movie. It's just something I always thought about. So what else are we dealing with? So we're dealing with, this idea that these intelligences, or this intelligence, is very ancient, is very old, has been here long before we have. It has a hand in guiding the human race, apparently by its conveyance of technological information. So there are no clues in this film or the book or in the comic that the monolith is interested in guiding human morality in any way, which I thought was a very interesting aspect of it. Instead, it pretty much is giving them, technology information or ideas for technology. The other is navigation information, something in the second communication to the astronauts that discovered the monolith on Clavius, obviously told them where they needed to go, which is Jupiter. to find the intelligence. It's giving them the next step. So what you have is, in the first step, the dawn of man, the information is, here's a bone, you can use it. And that opens the door, the domino effect, to eventually establishing your perimeter, establishing your security and your safety, ultimately discovering fire, the wheel, and so forth. The cradle of civilization becomes, until you ascend beyond the Earth's atmosphere into space, build a station on the moon. This is as far as you've gone, as far as the film goes. There's no Mars station or anything like that. So in the second transmission, it's telling them, okay, you've made it this far. You have created advanced technology, and you've established your presence on a celestial body other than the Earth. You're now on the moon. So now you need to go to Jupiter. And whether or not there is actual technology conveyed in terms of the propulsion system or the spacecraft, it's not really addressed in the film. Now, HAL 9000, the artificial intelligence companion that is built into the Jupiter mission, the HAL 9000 also appears was created before the monolith was discovered. And we learn this by the audio tape that is played near the end of the film, discussing the secret nature of the mission. There is a point where Dave Bowman, the astronaut, is shutting down HAL 9000 because HAL murdered his astronaut compatriot, Frank Poole. And there's a dated recording when HAL is coming online. And I believe 1999 or 1998 is the date that he was given. And in some of the 2001 back matter, in the sequel, 2010, The Year We Make Contact, and so forth, I think they explained that the HAL 9000, the HAL series of artificial intelligences goes back to like the mid-90s and so forth. So we were already working on artificial intelligence before the monolith made its second presence known to us. And perhaps artificial intelligence was one of the litmus tests that the monolith was looking for or waiting for before it conveyed this new information from us and sort of gave us our second step in our evolutionary mission, because that's what the Jupiter mission turns out to be, is indeed a next evolutionary step mission. When Bowman, the last remaining astronaut on the ship, investigates the monolith third appearance, which is now floating in a cosmic alignment with Jupiter, its moons, the sun, and probably some other stars, distant stars, and so forth. Alignment is a big theme in the film. Bowman takes one of the extracurricular vehicles outside of the main ship to investigate the monolith. The monolith basically draws him in to the Stargate. The Stargate is the point where it is open to interpretation as to the ending of 2001 and what it means, and I could probably do a couple of hours on that subject alone. There are tons of other YouTube videos on that subject, as well as a lot of material written on the internet about it. And you know that you've created a great work of art when so many words and videos have been created that interpret parts of that artwork and comment on that part of that artwork. There are some people who dismiss films like this because they don't understand the ending. And that's fine. Some people have different tastes, but if you are a more sophisticated moviegoer in search of more sophisticated storytelling, and you're interested in stories that sort of tickle our sense of myth and cosmogenesis and our place in the universe and our evolutionary journey, then 2001: A Space Odyssey is required viewing for you. On just that level. There are other levels it's required viewing for you, but 2001 is definitely required viewing for someone who's interested in those ideas, which makes it a very spiritual film, although there are no overt religious elements in it. It is definitely one of the most spiritual films I think I've ever seen. But the genius of it is that it does so much of that on almost a I don't want to say subversive level, but maybe, yeah, you know, it's very subtle. Let's put it that way. I think it's very subtle. And first time I saw the movie, I think I was probably 7 or 6 years old, somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, when they had it on broadcast TV. And of course, back then, that was a major event. You had 3 networks and a local channel. So you had ABC, NBC, CBS. I think ABC, I don't know why. I think ABC used to show it. I think they had the rights to it. And it would be it would be a major event. They would show it like once a year. And it would, with commercials, it would run like 4 hours. Now the film itself, I think, is around 3 hours. It's so long that it had an intermission in the theater, which is nice. Intermissions, I think they should bring this back. Yeah, so I saw it on our little, 26-inch color TV. And as a child, it blew me away. I don't think I understood the ending. And neither really did my parents. I think my mom got it. But my dad never did. I remember him saying, I don't get it. I don't understand the point, But I think maybe on my second or third viewing, it maybe began to coalesce in my mind that the ending was open to interpretation. But, generally what happens is after Bowman travels through the Stargate, through space and time itself, he winds up he goes from non-Euclidean space back to Euclidean space, to an area that was clearly prepared for him by this uber super intelligence. And it's basically a big fancy French hotel room. Although I never liked the flooring in that room. The flooring is like glass tile that's lit up. It's very loud. I don't like loud flooring. I like hardwood floors or carpets. So had I wound up in that room, and who knows, we might in our journey, I would probably, write a letter to the management and ask them to change the flooring. So, and the decor of French hotel rooms isn't exactly my taste either. It's a lot of really off-white. Anyway, I digress. I don't think one can dictate interior decoration to higher powers. Higher powers are going to decorate however the hell they want to. I think that's actually, in some of the great spiritual texts of our history. Anyway, so he finds himself in this room and he begins to rapidly age, at least how it's conveyed on film. And in the final scene, he's in bed. He's a very old man. He's dying. He's wheezing. And the monolith stands at the foot of the bed. And he reaches out to touch it. I believe it's actually hovering over him at the end point. And then the next scene is Bowman apparently is transformed from this old man at the edge of time and space, and is now what they call the Star Child. And the Star Child is basically this really cute baby with big blue eyes. And he's kind of in this sort of like translucent, embryonic sac. But he's floating around out in space, and he looks upon the Earth. And that's the end of the movie. As the music, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, plays from Wagner, I believe. Was it Wagner who wrote that? Based on the work by Nietzsche, which has got all kinds of symbology wrapped up in that as well. Boy, I am whiffing hard. If that wasn't done by Wagner, um, it's escaping me, and I don't think it was Wagner. Who wrote that? Oh my gosh. It's on the tip of my tongue. Mahler. It was Gustav Mahler, I think. So we'll double check that and get back to you. We'll check the tape on that one. I should know that. So anyway, but you all know the theme. Dun, 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 boom, 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 boom. Everybody on the planet, I think, has heard that music. So, and of course, that was around long before 2001: A Space Odyssey was made. But the music was, was a genius pick by Kubrick to announce pretty much the arrival of the monolith in each one of those scenes. So anyway, so that is the fourth appearance now of the monolith, is when it converts Bowman into the Star Child. So what is the Star Child? So Kirby had a take on that, which we'll see in the comic book. But before the comic book, and it's been a long time since I've read the novel by Clark, I think both of them elaborate on their interpretation of the Star Child. But in the film, Kubrick doesn't. It's all visual, and Kubrick's not going to spell it all out for you, which is why the movie is such a great movie. It leaves it open to the interpretation of the viewer. So in general, though, it is the idea of the next phase of evolution for humankind. It's transcendence. Bowman has evolved to the next higher state of human consciousness and physical being, as represented by this star baby. They call it the Star Child, though. I don't know. They should call it the Star Baby, because it is a baby. So, yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it represents. So, you have this, it's basically a film about human evolution, but how that evolution was guided by this superior intelligence. Now, is this an alien intelligence? They never tell you that straight up. Is it a manifestation of what we know as God? They never tell you that straight up. It's open to your interpretation. So, so the film as a religious artifact functions very well, because it requires a certain amount of faith. I think, even though it's a fictional story, but so much is drawn from our reality experience of what we know of religion and spirituality and mythology, and the sort of cosmogenesis myths of all of our world religions. You have things like, cosmic egg. You have, I particularly like the monolith as an object. It kind of reminds me of the monolithic stones that our ancestors used to build, monolithic architecture, things like Stonehenge being the most popular. And more recently, the monolith resembles our cell phones. You have this, black shoebox oblong object that basically gives us information and tells us what to do and where to go and how to do things. So we're holding them in the palm of our hand now. We should think deeply about these issues. We should contemplate them. Our televisions are monolithic flat screens now. We're no longer looking at curved, cathode ray tubes anymore. And our televisions are extensions of our phones now. They're all connected, and they're streaming data and information to us. They call it programming for a reason. So, in a sense, is the monolith in the film, in the books, in the comic book, is it programming humanity? Or I like to think of it in terms of it's planting seeds in our minds. It's giving us the seeds that grow into higher knowledge and self-awareness and understanding. I don't really find in these three artifacts of 2001, the book, the film, the comic, that we're explicitly being programmed by the monolith. More so that it's just nudging our free will. And that's a comforting thought, because I think that's really a foundational basis for the faiths, whatever your religion happens to be. I think free will has to be part of that equation. Whereas the monolith that we hold in our hand, the monolith television that's connected to it, our smart TVs, who programs that? Not a higher intelligence. We program it. So is it not a reflection of our own internal knowledge, issues, biases, hopes, fears, dreams, instructions, and so forth? Are we self-programming through our televisions, through our phones, and this technology that perhaps we've been given, that we've been nudged down the path with, maybe by higher intelligences, has sort of laid the groundwork for that, but it's not responsible for the programming. Ultimately, technology is a tool that we use in the way that we want to use. And as we know, especially in these recent times, technology can be used for both good and bad. So that's why stories like this have so much resonance, I think, with humanity. And that's what makes 2001 such an achievement, both at the novel and film and comic book level. And I'm glad that Jack Kirby chose to go ahead and put his spin on 2001 A Space Odyssey, because what we got out of that was, after Kirby had finished it, I think his hesitation to do it clearly turned into enthusiasm, because he went on to create a 2001 A Space Odyssey comic book series. So after he was done with the film adaptation, Marvel said, hey, probably Stan Lee said, hey, Jack, this thing's a big seller. Let's do some more, in Stan Lee's amiable way. And Kirby said, you got it. Kirby was such a workhorse, man. He's like, yeah, the dude was drawing 18, 20 hours a day, But I wouldn't say rumor. I mean, the fact was, he was doing like 16-hour days drawing. I mean, he just clearly loved what he was doing. So he started cranking out 2001 A Space Odyssey, the comic book. And so that gave Kirby the opportunity to take some of the themes of the movie and run with them, in Kirby's way, to explore those ideas. And it is a gonzo, wild science fiction comic book. Again, I think one of the greatest things ever created. I am close to having all of the issues collected, and those are certainly a topic for another video that we'll look at. But for this one, we're going to look at the Marvel Treasury edition, supersized comic book film adaptation of 2001 A Space Odyssey by Jack Kirby. I hope you enjoy it.